Only months after the start of the war, that had already cost the Confederacy hundreds of lives, the Southern Army was trapped in urban battlegrounds in Washington, D.C., and in cities throughout Pennsylvania and Maryland. House-to-house raids and artillery fire were taking their toll on thousands of innocent civilians. The South's war of aggression against its northern neighbor, aimed at deposing what it claimed was a threat to its own security, was flailing. President Jefferson Davis came under increasing attack from his critics who complained that the much ballyhooed weapons of mass destruction had still not been found. Despite Davis's continued insistence that the North had had the means and intent to launch hot air balloons across the Potomac to spread hoof and mouth disease against the Confederate States of America, and that such weapons would ultimately be found to prove him right, weapons agents could find no evidence that the Northern government had the capability of creating WMDs. The war was growing increasingly unpopular among the public as well. Despite the assurances of Secretary of War Leroy Pope Walker that the use of precision cannonballs was designed to limit collateral damage, the number of civilian casualties was enormous. In an attempt to curb public sentiment that was brewing against the war, President Davis prohibited the photographing of dead soldiers being returned to their families. As the year dragged on, the Sons of the South became caught up in bloody sectarian rivalries, which the South's invasion had triggered. Lutherans and Catholics engaged in street executions based on decades-long blood feuds and competing readings of the Gospels, while the Amish of Pennsylvania sought to create their own breakaway state. For Confederate soldiers, ill-equipped, understaffed, and lacking the proper protective clothing, morale was falling sharply. Yet Secretary Walker snubbed his critics' charges that he had underplanned for the war. As you know, you have to go to war with the army you have, not the army you want. Leroy Pope Walker. President Davis began bending the constitutional powers granted to the chief executive by ignoring the enforcement of hundreds of laws, while also conducting secret spying on the South's own citizens. Seeking the contents of private communications without warrants, Davis arranged secret agreements with the Western Union Company to eavesdrop upon telegraph wires. He also created secret prisons in which captured Northern citizens were held and interrogated without legal representation, against the rule of international law and the Confederacy's own constitution. There were also charges of cronyism, as Vice President Alexander Stephens's ties to the Savannah Iron Works appeared to open the doors to multi-million-dollar, no-bid government contracts that enriched the company beyond measure and received taxpayer dollars for services not rendered. Stephens's popularity among the public, already low, wasn't helped when he told a newspaper columnist that the Northern insurgency was in its last throes, an image startlingly in contrast with what the broadsheets were reporting. But the president remained defiant. When faced with suicide horse cart bombings that were taking the lives of his servicemen, Davis spoke directly to the threat. There are some who feel like the conditions are such that they can attack us there. My answer is, bring them on. Jefferson Davis.